Hi, welcome to episode 2 of the ThinkinHR podcast. I'm Adrian Wilkinson, you may know from the previous episode, and this is Ben Kunkar. Today I'm going to be doing a tribunal watch on a Court of Appeal case coming out recently.
I'm going to be discussing the difference between conduct and capability. We're going to be going through a few stories and scenarios that have came up, real life situations, and obviously I want you guys to understand whether it would be something that would go down the conduct route or the capability. Firstly, let's talk about how you define conduct and capability. So the difference between them, conduct, and I always do it, it's the can't and the won't. So conduct is someone can do the job, they just choose not to. Capability is the fact that someone wants to do the job, but they're not able to. Whether this be through lack of training, ability, skill set, knowledge, whatever it may be. So I'm going to throw a little scenario at you guys as something that's happened that I've been dealing with for the past 6 to 8 months, really, from a lady that's kind of sought our help. And I want to circle back around to it at the end, and after you hearing about the little stories of capability and conduct, I want you to decide which you think it would be and which route would be best to go down to. So, this lady, she ran a business for 26 years. She had a female worker that's been one of her best. She's been with her for about 15 years. She's been one of her best for 14 plus years. Very recently, so last year, I think it was in the start of last year, she lost her son to suicide, unfortunately, which is absolutely horrific and something that no one wants to go through. Since then, again, this business owner's tried to help as much as she can, but as you'll all be aware, it's not helped. This lady's performance has gone right down. She's not turning up some days. She's not doing the job, and it's really, really impacting the business and other workers. And obviously, this lady's came to us for help because it's been a year, and still there's no better in terms of the workplace environment, and she just doesn't know how to deal with it. So I'm going to start presenting this to you guys, and I want you to have a think about it through the podcast and think whether you realise this should be a conduct issue and you'd go down, if it's conduct, you're going down disciplinary meetings, or if it's capability and you need to start looking at kind of performance management, etc. So I'll circle back to that point at the end. We're going to move on to Ady's going to do a bit about the tribunal watch and what he's been dealing with this week. When we circle back, have a think about it, see if your answer's right.
Okay, so the case I want to cover today is quite a landmark case, really. Rogers versus Leeds laser cutting. And originally at tribunal in 2021, Mr. Rogers issued employment tribunal proceedings for automatic unfair dismissal. This was due to the fact he was dismissed for refusing to return to the workplace following so-called Freedom Day, as he feared he would contract COVID-19 and then pass it on to his vulnerable children. Obviously, I'm sure many of you had this situation at that point in time where people did not want to come into work for fear of contracting COVID. Obviously, a difficult time for everyone concerned. Every single one of us was learning things new, including us in employment law. We at the same time, our business had to adapt. Everyone's business indeed had to adapt, and everyone's employees had to adapt to that situation. In any case, the difficulty for him was more the general risk to his children catching COVID, which was the main concerns of him returning to the workplace. He felt, obviously he didn't want to pass on the disease to his children. However, it transpired that Mr. Rogers had, during the pandemic, chosen to leave his home to drop off a friend at the hospital, and had also started working at a pub. As a result, obviously his claim failed because the tribunal courts deemed that actually, if you weren't, your case hinged upon the fact that you were scared to go into work and you were unable to leave the home, which you were actually doing anyway, so there was little grounds for that case. Mr. Rogers then very recently took it to the Employment Tribunal's appeal courts, and this was upheld, so he was unsuccessful in his case. And many of you may be having these kind of issues now with COVID-related absences, COVID-related issues, where there has been members of staff perhaps, should we say, utilising COVID as a way to excuse the behaviours, etc., which again kind of ties into what Ben was talking about, conduct and capability. And we've seen a lot of that over the last few years. Myself and Ben worked through the pandemic. We understand fully the challenges that you all faced. The tribunal courts were determining the claim under SS 100D, and did the employee believe that there were circumstances of serious and imminent danger at the workplace? Was that belief reasonable? Could they reasonably have averted that danger? Did they leave or propose to leave or refuse to return to the workplace or the relevant part because of the perceived serious and imminent danger? Was that the reason or principal reason for the dismissal? Those were the points that the Tribunal Appeal Courts had to consider in looking at the case again. The company itself had carried out fantastic, robust risk assessments, and as a result of this, they put all the appropriate measures that were laid down by the government. And as such, it was very important that they'd done that, because that would have created a potential case for Mr. Rogers. However, in this case, the claim for Mr. Rogers was dismissed, and quite correctly, I'm sure you'll agree. What this kind of demonstrates to you is that how important it is for you to, under any circumstances, look at robust risk assessing within your business, look at making reasonable adjustments for people. Let's say somebody's pregnant, for instance. As you'll know, I'm not going to preach to you the basics of life. People have to have adjustments made for various conditions. So as long as you're following that correct procedural pathway, you should find that you'll be okay at tribunal. If you need any advice on this, of course, you'll know about us. You can always email us, give us a call if you're experiencing any difficulties at the present time.
Yeah, of course. And to be fair, on that note, like Adrian said, luckily enough, this company did above and beyond on the risk assessments and managed the situation incredibly well. However, what I want to kind of point out a few points on that case. So, the fact that the claim was for automatic unfair dismissal. I want people to really be aware of this, because a lot of people think they're safe for 2 years. If someone's not been employed for less than 2 years, we're safe, they can't go to tribunal. Of course they can. The only claim they can't go at tribunal is unfair dismissal. However, automatic unfair dismissal is a complete different case. So you could do that from day one because it's a statutory right. And again, like Adrian said, the factors that made this employee lose out was that he had another job. These points were invalid because he said he was scared of leaving the home for his vulnerable children. And again, however, if this company wouldn't have done the risk assessments correctly, they wouldn't have stated it in their policies correctly, and they wouldn't have followed a procedure, he would have got at least some element of their claim. If they didn't have a contract in place, for example, they would have awarded him based on a piggyback award of a non-compliant contract. And that's what you've got to be careful of. Just because they're going for one claim doesn't mean they can't piggyback. Doesn't mean they can't shoot off in a different direction. These days, you've got no win, no fee solicitors that will be advising these employees of which route is best to go down. So even though in this case, they were great, and again, the tribunal court ruled in, for me, the correct way. I assume you all think the same. You've got to be very careful, because sometimes it won't go that way if you aren't covered. Do you want to go with the first one for the questions, Adi?
Yes, of course. As you know, we've got a great feature on our podcast of Q&A, and that's your questions that come into us via our email at thinkhr@avonshaw.com. And you're very welcome, in addition, to give myself or Ben a call if you have any issues or want some advice. Ben's direct line, if you've got a pen and write it down quickly, is 0161 527 1000. My direct line is 0161 509 7481. And we're on the end of the phone to advise you during office hours. Send us an email outside these hours, we'll pick it up and we'll get back to you ASAP. usually the same day. So that won't be an issue for you. So the first question comes in from a care business owner. Can I just say, when we receive a question, we never mention any names. Obviously, there are implications to that. We don't want to publicly try to humiliate any employees, or obviously we've got to take those considerations into account, and you may not want your private business announced online in addition. So this particular care business owner was a lady, and she has a lady who's got repeated sickness. The owner can't afford to keep her on. It's just based on the fact that repeated sickness is costing the business too much. Okay, the agency worker is having to come in to cover, and as you'll probably know, if you know about agency workers, they cost usually somewhere in the region of 50 to 100% more than a normal employee. So you can imagine the drain on the business is like employing 2 people, and this has gone on for quite some time. The unfortunate thing is this lady has dealt with it incorrectly at the present time, but it's not irretrievable, should we say. So she has confronted the issue head on, which is fine in a sense, but you have to do it in the right way. What we have to bear in mind in situations like this is that this lady may have underlying issues, okay? She may have a condition that we're not aware of, so we need to be super pragmatic in terms of how we approach things and reactive to the situation and know the facts before we act on it. This lady had confronted the lady and said, "I'm sick of your sickness, can you please explain it? I'm not really happy about this," okay? So she's not threatened to dismiss her. We're not at that stage yet, but by saying those things, we are treading, into dangerous waters, if you like. So, in terms of the correct process to help this lady, and also for anyone else listening, if you want to understand these processes, we need to look at bringing this person in, having a sit down with them, talking to them really in a way where we're trying to be understanding, not accusing them, not being judgmental. Of course, we've got to allow them to have a witness during that initial meeting. We want to be talking to them really about, are there any underlying issues that you need to know about that are affecting their ability to work, whether that be, it could be a problem with a family member, it could be a long-term illness they have, it could be mental health issues, it could be a range of things. And this is where the danger points are in terms of you covering yourself in carrying out this meeting, because the amount of tribunals we deal with and the amount of people we speak to who go to tribunal because they haven't carried out this process is extreme. You can probably take away 20% of the tribunals in the courts through not following correct process. So we need to bring this person in, be understanding of their situation, ask them if there's any ways that you can help or support them, explain that unfortunately with the sickness levels, this is a huge impact on the business. You understand that this may not be their fault, there may be underlying problems, and you just want to understand it and see if you can assist them to help them get back to work correctly. And that's your first stage of the process. From that, you can then take the next steps and find out, depending on what happens in that meeting, you can start to look at what ways you're going to manage that. For this lady, if you need further advice, give myself a call, 0161 509 7481. I will talk to you through the whole process, and myself and Ben can both give you some help with that.
Yeah, of course. I had one. So mine was off a manufacturing business, the question that I got. And this was regarding a gentleman, an elderly gentleman, no longer kind of being able to do the job. His productivity's been lowered. He's not following the processes that, again, the business has set. So with this one, again, I always go back to the same route, because you've got to be very careful, because we're mentioning age, and you've got lots of age discrimination claims to come out of this. So you've got to make sure that you're following the right process. So I always say, start off with the scales. Are we looking at conduct? Is it that he can do the job but he won't do the job anymore? Or are we looking at capability? Is it the fact that he wants to do the job and can no longer do the job? So that's where we're going to weigh it up. Which way are we going? For me, again, we have obviously gone down with this one, spoke to them about, were they performing before? Yes, they were performing prior. What's affecting this now? Well, it's the fact that they can't do the lifting, they can't do the heavy work, the long hours, etc. They're working in quite difficult environments. So the age is an issue. So it's the capability side of things that we're going to look at. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we're talking about capability, we performance manage. So we always go down the performance management route. So on stuff like this, it's all about, again, working with the employee, showing them that you have a duty of care to them, to look after them, but you also have a duty of care to your business. So what can you provide to help them out? Can you assist them in any which way? Can you offer them more training? Can you, again, have someone monitor with them? Is it within the business reasons to have an assistant? Does that work for you? It's all about showing what you can offer. If these processes don't work, we're going to look at it. We've set you this training, Mr. We'll say Mr. Blogs. We'll call Mr. Blogs. So Mr. Blogs, we've invited you in. We've noticed that your performance has lowered from the past year. It's decreased by 40%. What are we going to do about it? Well, do you know what? I'm not getting the training I used to, is what this gentleman said, to be fair. I'm not getting the training I used to, and I'm just left to my own devices. Not a problem, sir. Let's offer you this training. What training do you need? What do you need help on? They provide that. Let's review it in a month again. We'll come back and review your performance. Performance hasn't changed. Again, is there anything else we can do? We've done this. We've shown you X, Y, and Z. We've catered you for the training. What other problems do you have? Well, I just feel like I need a little bit of help. You've got the assistance there. We'll see if we can do that. We'll see if it makes business sense, whether it's going to work. Again, they reviewed it within a month, and it was still in the same process. So this is where you can start looking at performance managing someone out of the business, because it's not that they don't want to do the work anymore, it's just that they physically can't. Again, you've got to follow your processes and procedures, so you've got to relate it back to a policy every single time. So you've got to make sure, in cases like this, your handbooks are completely robust and they suit the requirements of your business. And again, this is something that I'm going to help this gentleman with, just to make sure that they safely manage this person out of the business, or again, if there is a way to bring him back in, then we always will, because it's the biggest thing we do try. But in this scenario, it looks like that's the way it's going to be going.
There is always an option with that one to offer them another role within the business.
Yeah, of course.
Something less, less strain on them.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of the age and capability. So you can go down that route. Quite often people will not do that.
Yeah, and with it being a manufacturing business, the chances are there are alternate roles. Sure. There may be a role left in the admin side of things where it's not as heavy lifting, it's not as hard hours or long hours. And again, it's something that we are discussing, and there'll always be, if you can offer an alternate role, or you can make exceptions, or you can work around, just like when you mentioned the pregnant lady, you've got to make them alternate roles, you've got to make them exceptions, whether they come in late, start early, however it may help and assist. If you can show that you're offering that as a business, you're doing everything you can and within your powers to help that employee. If that doesn't help, then we go a different route.
I think as well, it's very important that we don't see employment law or HR as a way to beat your employees with a stick.
100%.
They're your most valuable asset within the business, and in terms of, you want to make sure you look after them, but also that you're getting the best out of them, you're seeing them progress, them happy in the role, and those are the important things. And your policies and following the correct procedures not only protects you as a business owner, but protects them as an employee, and makes them feel valued in addition. So if you're sitting down and taking time to help them, to assist them, to guide them, then as an employee, they're feeling like this person really cares about me, they're taking time out of their day, they're coming to see me, they're looking into my personal life, problems I might be having, and they're addressing those. So most employees won't see that as a bad thing. No,
exactly. And what, to be fair, on that point, Adrian, I'm going to circle back to the question that I asked you at the start regarding the lady with unfortunately lost her son, and the performance went down. Because the biggest thing for me here was that this lady was a valued member of the team. She'd been there for 15 years. So this owner also did not want to lose this person. She's always been a good member of staff. She's always been a loyal member of staff. And for me, it becomes very difficult because as a business owner, you'll know, you were in business, Adrian. You're very emotionally attached to your employees because you're so passionate about your business. Sometimes you think with your heart, not your head. And it's a positive at points, but it can also deter you from certain outcomes. Yeah, of course it is. It's because you're involved. But with this lady, we took all emotion aside and we had to bring it back a little bit of what have you physically done for the employee? Because they've gone through a horrific time, they've always been a good worker. What have you physically done to help them through this scenario? And when we actually stripped it back, there wasn't actually much. Yes, she'd been there to check in on her and she'd asked her if she's okay and she's allowed her to come in late or she didn't pull her up on things. And for me, that wasn't helping the employee. If you're allowing someone just to turn up when they want, then that's not helping them. We needed to set down actual physical points where we could assist. So that's where I introduced our Zest system to this lady, because she needed someone external from the business to talk to. It was something that with mental health, it's massive. It's not just something that's going to be fixed overnight with the click of a button. So she needed someone that she could help with counselling, with dealing with her emotions, so that she could physically concentrate on the work. She could get back into kind of the real life situations and not just be grieving, because it's still the process of grief. And this is when this owner started to realise that there wasn't actually much that she had done. She felt like by leaving her to her own devices and letting her come round to things, that she was doing that and she was being lenient. Whereas if she'd have just, and this is what we're doing at the minute, if she'd have just kind of sat down with this employee, understood what she needed, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to employment law for me and HR, is understanding, having that meeting where you sit down confidently with your employee and understand where you're at right now and how you get to the outcome that you want to achieve. What's going on? What's different? What's changed? How can I help? That's the biggest question that I always want you to understand is, how can I help? What can we do to change this? And then you start fixing the problems. That's where you get to solutions for me. And this is what this lady's going to do. She's introduced the Zest system to her employees, so she's got the counselling side. We've set aside, she had a lot of holidays to kind of be taken, so we've set some holiday breaks so that she can get into her own mind, understand about her grief and how she processes that, and how she moves forward with the business from that. And hopefully, for me, I think this is going to be a positive outcome, and this lady's going to work herself back into the business and start being that performer that she was and really assist the owner. It could have gone another way, but again, we took emotion out of the way, we understood the scenario, the situation, and this is the first steps to the direction that we think you can go. Because employment law is open to interpretation. You could have managed her out, you could have managed her in. It's what you want to do, but that's what we wanted to do.
Fantastic, man. And those are the kind of cases where they're really rewarding when you do get, in that case,
100%.
If that lady goes back into the workplace, she's very happy, she's performing, and the owner's getting the best out of her. I'm sure that relationship between employee and employer will blossom as well. It'd be a fantastic outcome. And something we find very rewarding, that we've been able to assist and help that company to achieve that. So I want to just have a quick mention of our sponsor before we close today. We're getting close to the half-hour mark now. So we're sponsored by Avonsure. As you'll know, myself and Ben are employment advisors for Avonsure. So we work day-to-day speaking with businesses, helping them solve problems, solutions. And what we do as a company is we provide an outsourced support, helping companies to ensure they've got all the right policies, contracts in place, they're operating in the correct manner, dealing with things effectively. Hopefully from the cases we've covered today and some of the pointers, you can see the kind of situations that can occur day to day. And I'm sure you have occasions where things occur, Ben, Avonsure, fantastic company.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what I want everyone to take away from these podcasts, and the reason that I picked the scenarios I did, it wasn't because it's something that's going to be happening every single day. It's maybe something that you've never came across in the entirety of your business. But my biggest thing when it comes to employment law and HR is you've got a plan for every eventuality. So even if it's not happened to you yet, it could happen. Even if you've got no issues, you may end up having issues. You don't want to come across something and then have nothing in place. So it's all about being proactive rather than reactive. And that's what we'll always teach. I'm a massive preacher for proactiveness. So if you have any questions or you are worried or that you're not fully compliant, what I'd suggest is if if you've got contracts, you've got handbooks, you're unsure if they're compliant, by all means you can send them across to ourselves and we can have a look at them, or our sponsor ThinkinHR, like I said, feel free to arrange a meeting with one of them, and they can actually talk you through the process of how they assist businesses on a day-to-day. Again, if you want to do anything like that, I would just email to the ThinkinHR@thinsure.com, and obviously we can get that arranged. Either Adrian or myself will give you a call, we can talk you through how it works.
Or call us direct. My number is 0161 509 7481 and Ben's number is
0161 527 1000. But again, because there were so many questions this week, we're not gone through all of them. But if you do have any questions, you know the email box, email them across. If it's just something you want to talk to us about, feel free to. If you're happy with us airing it, obviously we won't mention names like we said today. If you're happy for us to talk about it in the podcast, then by all means we'll talk about it in the podcast as well.
So, ThinkinHR@thinsure.com. That's the email. If you check the group page on LinkedIn, on business page on LinkedIn, you'll see the email there as a reminder of how it's spelt and worded. But we look forward to episode 3. Goodbye from myself.
Yeah, and like I said, guys, we'll post this video within the events page. We'll tag you all in it. So if you do have anyone that you think could benefit, by all means, comment tag them into the page as well. Other than that, we will see you in a fortnight's time.
Goodbye.